Weird sciencey facts that boggle my mind. Usually when you hear somebody say they just don't make things like they used to, it's from some old guy bitching about fuel injection or something. And when we talk about evolution, we usually associate it with things improving, adapting, getting better than the organisms that came before. But alligators and crocodiles have taught us that sometimes you just can't beat the original recipe. And as delicious as it is, I am not referring to Bayou Bob's at the Minnesota State Fair. Existing in some form or fashion for close to 250 million years, crocodiles and alligators are legitimately dinosaurs. And for a species to stick around that long, it goes without saying that they're generally pretty hardy creatures. So hardy, in fact, that they survived the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. And though they've changed in a few small ways from their prehistoric ancestors to the reptiles you see committing crimes with Florida man today, those changes have been minor. And for something to last hundreds of millions of years with no major iOS updates, had to be pretty perfect from the start. Now, there are lots and lots of interesting facts about these prehistoric predators. Their immune systems are so efficient that they can go up to a year without eating. Like their prehistoric pals, the shark, they can regrow their teeth if they're lost. And despite it being a myth that alligators and crocodiles never die of old age, they do age very gracefully, with the oldest living croc being 123 years old and the oldest recorded croc being 140 when he died in 2010. And there's almost no difference in strength and stamina between a 70-year-old croc and a 7-year-old croc. Alligators have shorter lifespans, but have been recorded living well into their 80s. And they can get to be big. Saltwater crocodiles can get to be over 20 feet long and weigh over a ton. That's the size of a car. And while all of these things have undoubtedly allowed them to survive longer than the affront to fashion that bears their name, arguably the biggest reason that crocs and gators continue to win evolution is that survival is in their blood. Literally. Let me explain. A carnivorous croc's life of murder comes with its fair share of battle wounds. Something as humans we can relate to because we've got a long history of dabbling in murder ourselves and therefore a long history of battle wounds. And from our incessant need to sanitize everything, I'd say it's common knowledge that it's often not the cut that kills us, but the infamous infection. In fact, in the Civil War, the United States' most costly war, of the 660,000 who perished, only a third did so on the battlefield. The vast majority would die days or weeks after receiving their battle scars from infection that couldn't be controlled. Now, I know most of us aren't Amos Moses, but if you've ever been in a swamp, it's not something that most people would call sanitary. And when crocs and alligators get injured, there's no doctors to disinfect them and they can't rub whiskey in their wounds. Yet somehow they almost never get an infection and they rarely ever get sick. This is because they have arguably the most robust immune system on the planet with some of the most advanced immune responses ever recorded. Which is impressive to say because it's probably a similar immune system to the one Grandpappy was rocking a few 100 million years ago. They have an antifungal defense and that remains relatively dormant in their blood until it encounters altered pH at the site of a wound and then springs into action and prevents any type of fungal infections. They have antibodies that have been shown to kill the HIV virus. So their immune system can kill the virus that kills our immune system. Their antibodies can kill bacteria that even penicillin can't tackle. And what may be even more impressive is that alligators and crocodiles can live decades in dirty, infested, polluted waters. They can continuously be subjected to carcinogens and radiation for their entire lives, and yet their immune system is so strong that they almost never develop cancer. Something that is almost unheard of for complex multi-celled organisms that have lifespans that last decades. And because of this, biologists, doctors, and scientists are studying alligator blood and immune systems, trying to isolate these antibodies and synthesize them into a form that humans can use to fight infection and maybe one day cure cancer. Unfortunately, this research is in its infancy, and it'll likely be some time before we see crocodilian-derived vaccines that morons can make up conspiracy theories about. But as funguses, bacteria, and viruses grow more and more resistant to our limited treatments for them, and as cures for cancer continue to remain just painfully and tragically out of reach, the fact that the solution to immeasurable modern medical mysteries just might be crocodilian antibodies from Grandma's original recipe developed hundreds of millions of years ago, well, that is pretty mind-boggling.